Jaden was eagerly awaiting his first flight and reunion with his grandmother, but he was humiliated and removed from the plane under the scornful gaze of passengers and the prejudiced flight attendant. For his mother, this ignited a spark of determination, and soon the story of injustice left the airport, sparking national outrage. 15-year-old Jaden, a tall, slender teen with warm brown eyes, felt a mix of anticipation and nerves as he navigated the crowded airport. This wasn't just any trip. It was his first time flying alone, and he was on his way to visit his grandmother, a journey he'd been dreaming of for months. His mother had packed his small backpack with everything he'd need for the flight: his favorite adventure novel, a set of worn but reliable headphones, and a handwritten note wishing him a wonderful journey. He clutched it tightly, knowing his mom's words would be a source of comfort if he got nervous. As he approached the gate, he rehearsed his parents' advice in his head. Stay calm, be polite, and follow the rules. He felt proud to be taking on such an adventure alone. Boarding the plane, he noticed that some passengers were looking at him with a mix of curiosity and, strangely, disapproval. He tried to ignore their glances, brushing it off as travel stress. After all, he hadn't done anything wrong. He was just another passenger. Taking his seat, he felt a surge of excitement, watching out the window as the airport buzzed with activity. He was finally here, ready for the sky, thinking about the moment he'd see his grandmother's welcoming smile. As the plane ascended, he closed his eyes, savoring the thrill of the takeoff. However, his excitement was cut short. Once the plane reached altitude and the engine noise softened, a flight attendant approached him. She was a short, severe-looking woman in a perfectly pressed navy blue uniform, her face unreadable, but her gaze fixed on him with a cold scrutiny. Without greeting or warmth, she demanded, "Do you even know the rules for flying alone, kid?" Her tone was clipped, each word coated in a disdain that stung. Startled, Jaden looked up at her, feeling a lump form in his throat. He tried to respond, his voice a bit shaky, explaining that he was following all the instructions he'd been given, just as his parents had told him. But before he could finish, she cut him off, her expression hardening. "Stand up," she ordered, her voice loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. A murmur spread through the cabin. Jaden's heart pounded as he stood, feeling the stares of every passenger on him. Whispers echoed around him, each one adding to the weight of humiliation pressing down on his shoulders. A voice muttered, "Kids these days," and Jaden felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment, his confidence, his excitement. All of it drained away, replaced by a feeling of isolation as he walked down the aisle, head down. Back in the waiting area, Jaden sank into a chair, numb and disoriented. Everything had changed in an instant. The joy and anticipation he'd felt only moments before were gone, replaced by confusion and a deep sadness. He sat in silence, clutching his backpack and fighting back tears, trying to understand why he'd been treated this way. This was supposed to be a happy memory, a milestone he'd cherish. Instead, he was left with a painful experience that felt unfair and impossible to explain. As Jaden sat alone in the airport waiting area, he felt a sense of helplessness weigh him down. His hands gripped his phone as he stared at the screen, debating whether to call his mother. Finally, taking a deep breath, he dialed her number. The moment her voice came through, his emotions overflowed, and he began recounting the painful details of what had just happened. His voice trembled, each word drawn out as he struggled to keep his composure, fighting back tears and the lingering humiliation he felt. Teresa, Jaden's mother, listened intently, horrified at the way her son had been treated. She could hardly believe it. Her heart ached at hearing her child describe being treated as if he were somehow guilty just for boarding a plane. With every word he spoke, her anger deepened. As he finished, she reassured him, vowing to do whatever it took to stand up for him. Beneath her calm tone, though, a storm was brewing. She was livid, and she wouldn't rest until justice was served. As soon as the call ended, Teresa sprang into action. She dialed the airline's customer service number, her voice steady but laced with cold resolve. Demanding to speak with a senior representative, she made it clear this was not just an issue with one rude employee. It was a glaring act of discrimination. Her son had done nothing wrong, and she wasn't about to let the incident slide without repercussions. Meanwhile, news of Jaden's removal spread throughout the airport. Passengers who had seen the incident whispered among themselves, appalled by the scene they had witnessed. Some had noticed Jaden's nervous, yet hopeful expression as he entered, and they couldn't understand why he was treated so harshly. Conversations about the incident quickly filled the terminal. One airport employee, who'd seen the entire interaction, quietly recorded the scene on his phone, catching the flight attendant's harsh tone and Jaden's hurt expression. Within hours, the video had hit social media, and the clip of Jaden being escorted off the plane with his head down began to spread like wildfire. The employee who posted it added a brief description of the event, and viewers quickly reacted, expressing outrage and support for Jaden, demanding answers from the airline. The video took off, amassing thousands of views and comments that poured in with messages calling for accountability, apologies, and justice for the boy and his family. Teresa, following the video's viral spread, felt a measure of relief amid her anger. Watching the incident go public, she realized that the airline might now be forced to address what had happened to her son in a way they couldn't ignore. With public scrutiny intensifying, she felt a surge of hope that finally this injustice would be brought to light for all to see. The video of the airport incident rapidly circulated across all social media platforms. It started with footage of a visibly upset and humiliated Jaden standing at the airplane's exit, surrounded by curious and judgmental glances. He appeared to be holding himself together, but his eyes showed deep hurt and shame. In the background, the voices of other passengers expressed outrage at his treatment. The video ignited a wave of anger, with people from all over the country, and even abroad, condemning the discrimination Jaden faced as a young black teenager. Hundreds of comments supporting Jaden and his family continued pouring in, fueling the momentum behind calls for justice. Pressure on the airline grew as messages flooded its social media pages, with demands for answers, threats of boycotts, and calls for accountability. The airline's initial attempt to defend the flight attendant's actions only made matters worse. Their vague statement about following proper protocol on board failed to include any apology or specifics, sparking even greater public outrage. News outlets quickly picked up the story, broadcasting clips from the viral video and discussing the airline's response and the flight attendant's behavior. Reports featuring comments from human rights experts and activists added fuel to the fire. Seeing the groundswell of support, Teresa felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wouldn't stop until they received a formal apology and the justice her son deserved. She issued a short statement to the press, describing her son's humiliation and demanding the airline take responsibility for their employees' actions. This statement spurred even more sympathy and support, as people expressed outrage at the unfair treatment of a young, innocent passenger. Under intense pressure from both the public and the media, the airline had no choice but to act. Under unyielding public pressure and extensive media coverage, the airline finally issued a formal apology to Jaden and his family. In their statement, airline representatives admitted that the situation had been highly unprofessional and unfair. They emphasized that the company's mission was to ensure a safe, comfortable experience for all passengers, regardless of age, race, or status. They acknowledged that the flight attendant's behavior fell far below the company's standards and pledged to conduct a thorough internal investigation. The company announced that the flight attendant would be temporarily suspended until the investigation concluded. To rebuild public trust, the airline also committed to mandatory diversity, respect, and inclusivity training for all employees, stating that these measures would help prevent similar incidents in the future and create an environment of equality and respect for all passengers. Teresa and Jaden, upon hearing of the public apology and the steps the airline had taken, felt a sense of relief. For Jaden, this felt like a moral victory, proving he wasn't alone and that his right to fair treatment was upheld. Teresa, grateful that her efforts hadn't been in vain, saw this as evidence that an ordinary voice could be heard when truth and societal support were behind it. The incident became a rallying point for many, a reminder of the importance of speaking out against injustice. It served as a clear message to companies that respect for customers must be foundational, not just a formality. Jaden's story symbolized how society can come together in the fight for equality and human rights, reminding everyone that justice can prevail when people stand together.